When a billionaire widow showed up at a stranger's door the morning after her husband's funeral, nobody expected what would happen next. Victoria Hale had everything: power, wealth, an empire at her fingertips. But grief doesn't care about your bank account. And Adrian Hayes, he was just a single dad trying to keep his world small and safe. One knock at 7 a.m. changed everything. This is a story about two broken people who found each other at the worst possible time and refused to let go. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The first time Adrian Hayes saw Victoria Hale cry, he didn't know who she was. It was 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, and he was 3 sips into his first coffee of the day when the knock came. Not the polite tap of a neighbor borrowing sugar, not the hurried bang of a delivery driver running late. This was something else, sharp, deliberate, and somehow desperate all at once. Adrian set his mug down on the kitchen counter and crossed the small living room of his apartment, his bare feet padding against the cold hardwood. Through the peephole, he saw a woman standing in the hallway, dark hair pulled back in a messy knot, black coat that looked expensive even through the distorted fisheye lens. Her head was down, face hidden. He opened the door. She looked up. That's when he saw it. The kind of devastation that can't be hidden behind good posture or designer clothes. Her eyes were swollen, rimmed with red that spoke of hours without sleep. Mascara had left faint tracks down her cheeks. Her lips were pressed together so tightly they'd gone pale, like she was physically holding herself together. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice cracked on the second word. "I know I shouldn't be here." Adrian stood there, hand still on the door, completely thrown. He'd lived in this building for 3 years and had maybe spoken to 5 neighbors total. He liked it that way. Quiet, predictable, safe. This woman was none of those things. "Are you okay?" The question came out before he could stop it, which was stupid because clearly she wasn't okay. Nobody showed up at a stranger's door at dawn looking like that if they were okay. She let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "No, I'm really not." Silence stretched between them. Adrian knew he should say something, offer to call someone, direct her to help, literally anything other than just standing there staring. But something in her expression stopped him. It wasn't just grief, it was exhaustion, the kind that came from performing strength for so long that the mask had finally shattered. "Can I?" She stopped, squeezed her eyes shut, tried again. "Can I just sit somewhere quiet? Just for a little while?" I don't need anything. I just need to not be where I am right now." Every rational part of Adrian's brain screamed that this was a bad idea. You don't let strangers into your home. You don't get involved. You especially don't get involved with a woman who looks like she's one breath away from falling apart completely. But he'd been that person once. The one who needed to disappear. To find a space where no one knew him. Where he didn't have to be anything or explain anything. Where he could just exist without the weight of everything crushing him. He stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated for just a second, like she hadn't actually expected him to say yes, then walked past him into the apartment. Adrian closed the door and turned to find her standing in the middle of his living room, looking suddenly lost. The apartment was small, just a 1-bedroom with an open kitchen and living area, but it was clean, organized, everything in its place. The couch was old but comfortable, a gray sectional he'd bought secondhand when he'd first moved in. His laptop sat open on the coffee table next to a half-finished mug of yesterday's coffee he'd forgotten to clean up. Through the doorway to the left, his daughter Emma's room was still dark, her door cracked open the way she liked it. "You can sit," Adrian said, gesturing to the couch. I'll be in the kitchen, working. You can stay as long as you need to." She looked at him then, really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out if he was real. "You don't even know me." "No," he admitted, "but you look like you need this, so." Something shifted in her expression, not quite gratitude, but close to it. She moved to the couch and sat down slowly, like her body hurt. Once she was settled, she pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them, and stared at nothing. Adrian retreated to the kitchen. He opened his laptop and pretended to work on the freelance web design project that was due Friday, but mostly he just watched her out of the corner of his eye. She didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there, breathing. An hour passed, then another. At 9 o'clock, Emma's door opened and his daughter emerged, 6 years old and already fully opinionated about everything. She was wearing her favorite purple pajamas with the unicorns on them, and her hair was sticking up in about 17 different directions. "Dad, I'm hungry," she announced, then stopped when she saw the woman on their couch. "Who's that?" The woman's head lifted slightly, but she didn't turn around. "That's—" Adrian realized he didn't actually have an answer. "That's a friend. She's having a hard day." Emma considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "Oh, okay. Can I have pancakes?" "Sure, kiddo." As Adrian pulled out the mixing bowl and started measuring flour, Emma climbed onto one of the kitchen stools and swung her legs. She kept glancing at the woman on the couch, curiosity written all over her face, but she didn't ask any more questions. That was one of Emma's superpowers. She somehow always knew when to push and when to let things be. He made pancakes. Emma ate 3, drowned in syrup, and chattered about a dream she'd had involving a talking cat and a spaceship. The whole time, the woman on the couch didn't move. At 10:30, Emma went to get dressed for her Tuesday art class at the community center. Adrian cleaned up the breakfast dishes, loaded the dishwasher, and tried not to think about the fact that he had a complete stranger in his living room, and it felt somehow less weird than it should. When Emma came back out, dressed in leggings and a t-shirt with paint stains that would never come out, she walked right up to the couch. "Bye," she said to the woman. "I hope your day gets better." The woman turned her head then, just enough to see Emma's face. "Thank you," she whispered. Adrian took Emma to her class, spent 2 hours sitting in a coffee shop trying to catch up on work, then picked her up and took her to the park because it was sunny and she had energy to burn. By the time they got back to the apartment, it was almost 3 p.m. The woman was still there. She'd moved slightly, curled up on her side now, one arm tucked under the throw pillow Adrian kept on the end of the couch. Her eyes were closed, but he wasn't sure if she was actually sleeping or just pretending. Emma went to her room to play. Adrian made himself another coffee and sat back down at the kitchen table with his laptop. He worked until dinner time, then made spaghetti because it was easy and Emma would actually eat it. They ate at the small dining table, and the woman on the couch still didn't move. At 7:30, Emma brushed her teeth and changed into fresh pajamas. She stopped by the couch on her way to bed. "Good night," she said softly. The woman's eyes opened. "Good night." After Emma was tucked in and the apartment was quiet again, Adrian finally sat down in the armchair across from the couch. The woman was sitting up now, the blanket he'd draped over her earlier still wrapped around her shoulders. "I should go," she said. It was the first time she'd spoken in hours. "You don't have to." She looked at him, really looked at him this time. Her eyes were still red, still exhausted, but there was something else there now, confusion maybe, or disbelief. "Why did you let me stay?" Adrian thought about it. "You needed to. That seemed like enough." "You don't know anything about me." "No," he agreed, "but I know what it looks like when someone's barely holding on. And I know what it feels like to need a place where you can stop pretending for a minute." She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "My husband died on Sunday." The words landed heavy in the quiet room. Adrian felt his chest tighten. Sunday, 2 days ago. The funeral must have been yesterday. "I'm sorry," he said, because what else was there to say? "Everyone keeps telling me that. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry this happened. I'm so sorry." Her voice was flat, hollow. Like the words mean anything. Like sorry brings him back. Adrian didn't say anything. There was nothing to say to that. "The funeral was yesterday," she continued, staring at her hands. "There were 800 people there. 800. All of them watching me, waiting to see if I'd break. Reporters outside with cameras. Business partners shaking my hand and telling me how strong I was being. His mother sobbing in the front row. And I stood there. I gave the eulogy. I thanked everyone for coming. I did everything I was supposed to do." She stopped, jaw working like she was trying to physically push the next words out. "Then I went home to the emptiest house I've ever been in, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. The walls were too close and the ceiling was too low, and everywhere I looked was something of his. His coffee mug in the sink, his jacket on the hook by the door, his shoes by the bed. And I tried to sleep, but I couldn't because the bed was too big and too cold, and I kept reaching for him, and he wasn't there." Her voice cracked. She sucked in a breath that sounded painful. So I left, got in my car at 6 o'clock this morning, and just drove. I don't even know how I ended up in this neighborhood. I parked and I walked and I saw your building and I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe if I could just find one place where nobody knew me, where nobody expected anything, I could exist for 5 goddamn minutes without feeling like I was suffocating. She looked up at him. And then you opened the door. Adrian felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he didn't want to name. You picked the right door, he said quietly. Apparently. She unwrapped herself from the blanket and stood up, moving stiffly like her whole body ached. I should go. I've imposed on you enough. You didn't impose. You asked. I said yes. That's not the same thing. She studied him with those red-rimmed eyes, and for a moment Adrian thought she might cry again. But she didn't. She just nodded once, picked up her coat from where she'd left it draped over the arm of the couch, and walked to the door. She had her hand on the handle when she stopped. Can I? She didn't turn around. Can I come back tomorrow? The question caught him completely off guard. What? Tomorrow morning, same time. Can I come back? Now she did turn, and the vulnerability in her face was almost unbearable. I know it's insane. I know you have no reason to say yes, but I don't think I can do another day in that house. Not yet. And this is the first place I've been since Sunday where I could actually breathe. Every logical part of Adrian's brain said this was a terrible idea. He didn't know this woman, didn't know what her life looked like or what she was running from. Getting involved with someone else's grief was messy and complicated and the opposite of the careful, controlled existence he'd built. But he remembered sitting alone in his apartment 3 years ago, right after the divorce was finalized, feeling like his entire life had imploded. He remembered how desperately he'd wanted just one person to see him falling apart and not ask him to explain it or fix it or be okay. Yeah, he heard himself say. Yeah, you can come back. The relief that crossed her face was almost painful to witness. Thank you. Then she was gone. Adrian stood in the doorway for a long moment after she left, staring at the empty hallway, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. The knock came at exactly 7 a.m. the next morning. Adrian had been awake since 6, which was unusual for him. He told himself it had nothing to do with the woman who'd spent nearly 12 hours on his couch yesterday. He was just awake. That happened sometimes. But when the knock came, the same sharp, desperate sound, he knew he'd been lying to himself. He opened the door. She looked marginally better than yesterday. The same black coat, but her hair was down this time, falling in dark waves around her face. She'd done something with makeup to hide the worst of the redness around her eyes, but underneath it all, she still looked exhausted. Hi, she said. Hi. I wasn't sure if you actually meant it, about coming back. I meant it. She nodded once and stepped inside. This time she knew where to go, straight to the same spot on the couch, curling up in the corner with the throw pillow tucked against her side. Adrian went to the kitchen, made coffee, started working on his laptop. This time she fell asleep around 8:30, and when Emma came out at 9, she whispered her good morning to Adrian and tiptoed past the couch like she was trying not to wake someone in a library. The woman slept until almost noon. When she woke up, she sat there for another hour just staring at nothing, and then she left without saying a word. So, the next morning, the knock came at 7 a.m. again, and the morning after that, and the morning after that. By Friday, it had become a routine Adrian couldn't have explained to anyone if they'd asked. She showed up, she sat on his couch, he worked in the kitchen, sometimes she slept, sometimes she just stared. And every evening she left. They barely spoke. Maybe 10 words total across those first 5 days. But there was something about the silence that felt important, like it was the point. On Saturday morning, day 6, Emma finally asked the question Adrian had been waiting for. Dad, why does the sad lady keep coming here? They were sitting at the breakfast table, Emma working her way through a waffle while the woman slept on the couch. Adrian set down his coffee mug and tried to figure out how to answer that. She's going through something really hard, he said carefully. And sometimes when things are hard, you need a quiet place to just be, without anyone asking you to be okay. Emma absorbed this, syrup dripping off her fork. Is that why we moved here? After you and Mom split up? Jesus. His kid was too smart. Yeah, he admitted. Yeah, that's part of it. So we're her quiet place now? I guess we are. Emma nodded like this made perfect sense. Okay, can I bring her some orange juice? Orange juice makes me feel better when I'm sad. Adrian glanced at the couch, at the woman curled under his blanket with her eyes closed and her face finally relaxed. Yeah, kiddo, I think that would be nice. Emma poured a small glass of orange juice and carried it over to the coffee table, setting it down carefully before returning to her breakfast. The woman didn't wake up, but later, when she did, she drank it. On Monday, day 9, something shifted. She showed up at 7 a.m., like always, but this time when she came in, she looked at Adrian and said, "My name is Victoria." It was the first piece of herself she'd offered, the first crack in the wall. "Adrian," he replied. "I know. Your daughter said it." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "She's sweet." "She is." He paused. The orange juice was her idea. "I figured." Victoria moved to the couch but didn't curl up immediately. Instead, she sat normally, feet on the floor, hands in her lap. "How old is she?" 6. "And it's just the two of you?" "Yeah, her mom and I split up when she was 3. We share custody, but I have her most of the time." Victoria nodded slowly. "That must be hard." "Some days more than others." Another silence, but this one felt different, less heavy. "I should probably tell you who I am," Victoria said quietly. "In case you... I don't know. In case it matters." "You don't have to." I want to." She took a breath. "My full name is Victoria Hale. I run Hale Industries. It's a tech company," Adrian finished. Recognition clicked into place. He'd seen her face in the news, though he'd never connected it to the broken woman on his couch. "You developed that new AI-driven manufacturing system. It was all over the business section last year." "That's the one." Her smile was bitter. "My husband, Marcus, started the company 15 years ago. I took over as CEO after we got married. And now he's gone, and I'm sitting on a stranger's couch because I can't face going into the office and pretending I know what the hell I'm doing without him." The confession seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised Adrian. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to—" "Don't." He shook his head. "Don't apologize. You don't have to perform here. That's the whole point." Something in her expression cracked. Not breaking, softening. "Why are you doing this? Letting me come here every day? You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You could be," Adrian agreed, but you're not. You're someone who needed help and asked for it, and I was in a position to help. That's all. Nobody just does that. There's always a reason. Maybe the reason is that 3 years ago, I was the one who needed a quiet place to fall apart, and I didn't have one. And maybe I know what a difference it would have made if I had." Victoria stared at him. "What happened 3 years ago?" "My marriage ended. Not dramatically. No big fight or betrayal or anything like that. We just stopped working, realized we'd built a life around an idea of who we thought we should be instead of who we actually were. And when we finally admitted it, everything just collapsed." He hadn't talked about this in years. Hadn't wanted to. But something about the way Victoria was looking at him, like she actually wanted to know, like it mattered, made the words come easier. "Emma was 3, he continued, "and I just left my job at a marketing firm because the hours were killing me, and I wanted to be more present for her. So suddenly I was divorced, unemployed, and living in a studio apartment that was so small I could touch both walls from the middle of the room. And every day I'd drop Emma off at daycare and come back to this empty space and think, what the hell happened to my life?" "How did you get through it?" "I didn't, for a while. I just existed. Went through the motions, took care of Emma because I had to, but everything else was just survival mode. And then one day I realized I'd been surviving for almost a year and I was tired. So I made a choice. I started freelancing from home so I could be there when Emma needed me. Found this apartment in a quiet building where nobody bothered me. Built a life that was small and predictable and safe." "Safe?" Victoria repeated. "Is that what this is?" Adrian considered the question. "It was, before you showed up." That got a real smile out of her. Small, but genuine. "Sorry about that." "Don't be." The silence that followed was comfortable. Victoria finally curled up in her usual spot, but this time she didn't close her eyes. She just sat there, and after a while she started talking. She told him about Marcus, about how they'd met at a tech conference 12 years ago when she was a junior developer and he was already building his empire. How he'd been brilliant and ambitious and completely relentless in his pursuit of innovation. How he'd convinced her to leave her job and help him build Hale Industries into something that could change the world. "We got married 5 years ago," she said. "Small ceremony. Just us and a handful of people who mattered. Marcus didn't believe in big weddings, said they were a waste of money that could be better spent on R&D. "Romantic," Adrian said dryly. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. It was short and a little broken, but it was there. "It sounds bad when I say it like that, but it was us, you know? We didn't need the big production. We had the work. We had each other. That was enough." "What happened to him?" Adrian asked quietly. "If you want to talk about it." Her smile faded. "Heart attack. No warning. He was in his office, working on a presentation for a board meeting, and he collapsed. By the time anyone found him, it was too late." "Jesus." "Yeah." She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "He was 42 and healthy, and he ran 5 miles every morning, and he never touched anything worse than an occasional glass of wine. And now he's gone, and I'm 30 years old, and I'm a widow, and I don't know how to be this person." Her voice broke on the last word. Adrian stood up, crossed the room, and sat down on the other end of the couch. He didn't touch her, didn't think she wanted that. But he was there, close enough that she wasn't alone. "You don't have to know," he said. "You just have to get through today, and then tomorrow, and then the day after that. Eventually, all those days add up to something that feels like living again." Victoria looked at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Did it work for you? Did the days add up?" "Eventually, yeah." She nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay. They sat there together in the quiet apartment, and something between them shifted again. Not quite friendship yet. It was too new, too fragile for that. But it was connection, the kind that happens when two people see each other's broken parts and don't flinch. By the end of week 2, Victoria had started staying longer. She'd show up at 7 a.m., sleep for a few hours, then wake up and just sit quietly while Adrian worked. Sometimes Emma would join her on the couch after school, chattering about her day, while Victoria listened with an attention that suggested she was genuinely interested. Other times it was just the two adults, existing in the same space without needing to fill it with words. On Thursday of week 2, Victoria brought coffee. "I realized I've been showing up every morning and drinking your coffee for 2 weeks, she said, handing him a cup from some fancy cafe he'd never heard of. "Seemed like I should contribute." "You didn't have to do that." "I know, but I wanted to." The coffee was incredible, dark and rich, and somehow both smooth and complex. Adrian took a sip and made an involuntary sound of appreciation. "Good?" Victoria asked, amused. "This is not normal coffee. This is like coffee's sophisticated older sibling." She smiled, a real full smile this time. "There's a place about 10 minutes from my house. They import the beans from some sustainable farm in Colombia and roast them in-house. Marcus used to say, it was pretentious. I say it's delicious." "Your husband was wrong. This is life-changing." The ease with which they talked about Marcus now surprised Adrian. 2 weeks ago, just saying his name had made Victoria's face crumble. Now she could mention him with something approaching normalcy. It wasn't that the grief had gone away. He could still see it in her eyes, in the careful way she held herself. But it had shifted, made room for other things. That afternoon, after Emma got home from school, Victoria did something she'd never done before. She asked if she could help with dinner. Adrian blinked. "You want to help cook?" "Is that weird?" "It feels weird. Tell me if it's weird." "It's not weird. Yeah, sure. You can help." So Victoria Hale, Billionaire CEO, stood in his tiny kitchen chopping vegetables for stir-fry, while Emma sat at the table and told her an elaborate story about a girl in her class who'd allegedly brought a frog to school in her backpack. Victoria listened like it was the most important thing she'd heard all day, asking clarifying questions and gasping in all the right places. They ate dinner together at the small table, the three of them squeezed in close because the table was only meant for two. Emma dominated the conversation as usual, but Victoria seemed content to listen. And when Emma accidentally knocked over her water glass, Victoria grabbed a dish towel and helped clean it up without missing a beat. It was so normal, so domestic, and it scared the hell out of Adrian because it felt right in a way nothing had felt right in a long time. After Emma went to bed, Victoria lingered. She helped Adrian clean up the kitchen, then followed him back to the living room and sat on the couch while he settled into the armchair. "I should probably stop coming here every day," she said. Adrian's stomach dropped. "Oh, okay. I don't want to," she clarified quickly, "but I should. I've been avoiding the office for 2 weeks, avoiding my house, avoiding everything, and I can't keep doing that forever." "No," Adrian agreed, trying to ignore the unexpected disappointment settling in his chest. "You can't. But I don't know how to go back to that life, to being Victoria Hale, CEO, the woman who has her shit together and makes billion-dollar decisions and doesn't fall apart. Who says you have to have your shit together?" She looked at him like he'd suggested something radical. "Everyone, the board, the employees, the investors, they're all waiting to see if I can do this without Marcus. If I show up looking like I did 2 weeks ago, they'll smell blood in the water." "So you're just going to, what, pretend you're fine?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do." Her voice was firm, but Adrian could hear the tremor underneath. "Because the alternative is admitting I'm not, and I can't afford that. Too many people depend on me." Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You know what I think? I think you've been pretending to be fine since the moment Marcus died. The only place you've let yourself be real is here. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you need both." "Both?" "The version of you that runs a company and makes decisions and holds it together, and the version that shows up at a stranger's door at 7 a.m. because she can't breathe. You don't have to choose one or the other." Victoria stared at him. "You're saying I should keep coming here, even after I go back to work. I'm saying that if this place helps you, then yeah, keep coming." Something complicated crossed her face. Relief and fear and gratitude all tangled together. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. "Really? Because I keep trying to figure out your angle, and I can't." "There's no angle. Everyone has an angle." "Not everyone." Adrian held her gaze. "Look, I'm not going to pretend this hasn't been weird, because it has. But it's also been, I don't know, good? You showing up every morning gave me something to care about, I guess. Something outside the careful little world I built. And maybe I needed that more than I realized." "I gave you a purpose," Victoria said slowly. "No. You gave me a reminder that there's more to life than just surviving. That sometimes the right thing to do is open the door when someone knocks, even if it doesn't make sense." They looked at each other across the small living room, and Adrian felt something shift between them. Something that went beyond grief and comfort and quiet mornings on the couch. Something that felt dangerously like the beginning of something neither of them was ready for. Victoria must have felt it too, because she stood up abruptly, reaching for her coat. "I should go." "Okay. Same time tomorrow?" "Yeah. Same time." She left, and Adrian sat alone in his apartment, wondering when exactly this had stopped being about helping a stranger and started being about something else entirely. Victoria went back to work on a Monday. Adrian knew because she told him the Friday before, standing in his doorway at the end of the day with her coat buttoned up and her car keys in her hand. "I'm going in on Monday," she'd said. "Back to the office, back to everything. How do you feel about that?" She'd laughed, but it was hollow. "Terrified. But I can't keep hiding forever." "You weren't hiding, you were healing." "Maybe." She'd looked at him with those dark eyes that had slowly regained some of their sharpness over the past 2 weeks. "Will you be here at 7, Monday morning?" "Yeah, I'll be here." And he was. Monday morning, 7 a.m., the knock came like clockwork. But when Adrian opened the door, Victoria looked different. She was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his rent. Her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, makeup carefully applied to hide the evidence of the past few weeks. She looked like the woman from the news articles, put together, powerful, untouchable, except her hands were shaking. "Hi," she said. "Hi, come in." She walked past him, but this time she didn't go to the couch. She stood in the middle of the living room, gripping her briefcase like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I have a meeting at 9, she said. Full board. They want to discuss Q4 projections and the merger talks with Davison Tech. And I haven't looked at a single report in 2 weeks, and I don't know if I can do this." Adrian set down his coffee. "Do you want to do this?" "Want has nothing to do with it. I have to." "That's not what I asked." Victoria's jaw tightened. "No, I don't want to walk into that building and sit in Marcus's chair and pretend I know what I'm doing without him. I don't want to field questions about when I'm coming back full-time, or listen to Roger from accounting tell me he's there if I need anything, while he's clearly angling for a promotion. I don't want any of it." "Then don't go." She stared at him. "I can't just not go." "Why not?" "Because 800 people work for that company. Because we're in the middle of the biggest deal in Hale Industries history. Because if I don't show up, they'll think I'm weak. And the second they think that, I lose everything Marcus built." "What about what you built?" Adrian asked. "You've been running that company for 5 years. That's not nothing." "It's not the same. Marcus was the vision. I was just the execution." "That's bullshit, and you know it." Victoria's eyes went wide. In 2 weeks of morning visits, Adrian had never challenged her like this. He'd been careful, gentle, giving her space to fall apart without judgment. But watching her stand there, vibrating with anxiety over a job she didn't even want to do, something in him snapped. "You developed the AI system that tripled productivity," he continued. "You negotiated the contracts with the manufacturing plants in Singapore. You were the one who figured out how to scale without compromising quality. Marcus might have started the company, but you're the reason it's still standing. And if you walk in there believing you're just filling his shoes, you've already lost." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know how to be her. The person who walks in there and owns it. So don't be her. Be you. Be the woman who shows up at a stranger's door because she needs help. The one who admits when she's scared. The one who drinks fancy coffee and helps a 6-year-old clean up spilled water and doesn't pretend everything is fine when it's not. That woman can't run a billion-dollar company." "Why not?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria set her briefcase down, pressed her palms to her eyes, and took a long, shaky breath. "I don't know," she finally said. "I don't know." Adrian crossed the room and stood in front of her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel he was there. "What time's your meeting?" 9. "You've got almost 2 hours. Sit, have some coffee, breathe, and then when you're ready, you can go in there and do whatever you need to do." She looked up at him, and for a second he thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just nodded, shrugged out of her suit jacket, and sat down on the couch in her usual spot. Adrian made her coffee, the fancy kind she'd brought last week because he'd gone out and bought his own bag of the pretentious beans. She took the mug with both hands and held it like it was the only solid thing in the world. They sat in silence for 30 minutes. Then Victoria opened her briefcase and pulled out her laptop. She started reading through reports, her face settling into the focused expression Adrian had started to recognize. This was the CEO, the woman who made decisions worth millions. But every few minutes, she'd glance up at him, and he'd see the person underneath, the one who was terrified and grieving and doing it anyway. At 8:30, she closed the laptop. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I can do this. I know you can." She stood, put her jacket back on, smoothed her hair, transformed back into Victoria Hale, billionaire. But before she left, she turned to him. "Thank you for this, for all of it. Good luck with the board." She smiled, small and genuine. "I'll need it." The door closed behind her, and Adrian was left alone in his apartment, feeling like he'd just sent someone off to war. He tried to work but couldn't focus, kept checking his phone, even though Victoria had never given him her number, and he had no way of knowing how the meeting went. Around noon, he took Emma to the park, and the whole time he wondered if Victoria was okay, if she'd made it through the board meeting without falling apart, if she was regretting going back. The knock came at 6:47 p.m. Adrian opened the door to find Victoria still in her suit, but the jacket was gone and her hair was falling out of its ponytail, and she looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with grief. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I made it through the meeting, answered every question, approved the merger terms, made 3 executive decisions that Marcus would have hated." She walked past him into the apartment. Then I locked myself in my office and cried for 20 minutes. But you made it through. Barely. She collapsed onto the couch. Roger from accounting is definitely angling for a promotion, by the way. You were right about that. Emma emerged from her room, saw Victoria, and immediately climbed up next to her. Hi, Victoria. Did you have a hard day? Victoria looked at the 6-year-old with something close to wonder. Yeah, kiddo, I really did. Dad says when you have a hard day, you should have ice cream. We have chocolate. Emma, Adrian started, but Victoria was already smiling. Ice cream sounds perfect. So they had ice cream for dinner, chocolate for Emma and Victoria, vanilla for Adrian because he was boring and accepted it. They sat around the small table, and Emma told Victoria about the frog incident. Apparently the frog had escaped during math class and caused absolute chaos. And Victoria told Emma about her meeting in terms a 6-year-old could understand. So basically, a bunch of people asked me a lot of questions, and I had to know all the answers, Victoria explained. That sounds like a test, Emma said. It kind of was. Did you pass? Victoria considered this. I think so. I'm still not sure. After Emma went to bed, Victoria stayed. She helped Adrian clean up the ice cream bowls, then followed him to the living room and sat on the couch while he took the armchair. This wasn't what I expected, she said. What do you mean? Coming back here. After work, I thought maybe after I went back to the office, I wouldn't need this place anymore. That the worst was over. Is it? Adrian asked. Over? No. She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them, back to the position she'd held that first morning. It's different now, but it's not over. The grief is still there. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. Like it's moved over to make room for other things. For work. For normal conversation. For ice cream with your daughter. That's good, isn't it? That it's making room? I think so. But it's also terrifying. Because if I'm moving forward, if I'm having moments where I'm not thinking about Marcus every single second, does that mean I'm forgetting him? Adrian shook his head. Moving forward isn't the same as forgetting. It's just learning to carry it differently. Victoria looked at him. Is that what you did after your divorce? Eventually. It took a while. There were days when I felt guilty for not feeling terrible, Like if I was okay, it meant the marriage hadn't mattered. But that's not how it works. You can grieve something and still keep living. How long did it take before you felt okay again? Honestly, I'm not sure I'm fully there yet. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. I mean, I'm functional. I take care of Emma. I work. I pay my bills. But the whole building a life beyond just survival thing, that's still a work in progress. But you're trying. Yeah, I'm trying. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Victoria said, I'm supposed to have dinner with Marcus's mother tomorrow night. How do you feel about that? Like I'd rather do literally anything else. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Carol means well. She really does. But every time I see her, all she wants to talk about is Marcus. What he would have wanted, what he would have done, how I need to keep his legacy alive, and I can't. Not right now. Have you told her that? How do I tell my dead husband's mother that I can't handle talking about him? That every conversation with her feels like drowning? The same way you told me, honestly. Victoria shook her head. It's not the same. You're different. How? She hesitated, like she was trying to find the right words. You don't need me to be anything. You don't have expectations. You just let me exist. Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. For what it's worth, I think you should tell her. Carol, I mean. If the dinners are making things harder, she should know. Maybe. Victoria stood up, reaching for her jacket. I should go. It's late and you probably have work tomorrow. I always have work. That's the beauty of freelancing. It never ends. She smiled. Same time tomorrow? Yeah, same time. But the next morning, Victoria didn't show up. 7 a.m. came and went. Then 7:15. By 7:30, Adrian had checked his phone 4 times, even though he had no messages to check. At 8 o'clock, Emma came out for breakfast and looked at the empty couch with obvious confusion. Where's Victoria? I don't know, kiddo. Maybe she had an early meeting. But he didn't believe it, and from the look on Emma's face, she didn't either. The day dragged. Adrian tried to work but kept glancing at the door. He took Emma to school, came back, worked some more, picked Emma up, made dinner. The whole time, a low-level anxiety hummed under his skin. Something was wrong. He could feel it. At 9:47 p.m., long after Emma had gone to bed, the knock finally came. Adrian practically ran to the door. Victoria stood in the hallway, and she looked wrecked. Not like that first morning, this was different. Her eyes were dry but wild, her hair a mess, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I should have called, texted, something. But I don't have your number and I didn't know how to. It's okay. Come in." She walked inside and started pacing. The dinner with Carol went exactly like I thought it would. Worse, actually. She spent 2 hours telling me how Marcus would have wanted me to keep the company exactly as it was. How he wouldn't want me making any major changes. How I needed to honor his vision. Victoria and I tried. I really tried to be patient, to listen. But then she started talking about how I should sell the house because it's too big for one person, and how I should move closer to her so she can keep an eye on me, and I snapped. Adrian stopped her mid-pace. "What did you do?" I told her that Marcus was gone, and I couldn't keep living my life according to what he would have wanted because he's not here to want anything anymore. I told her that I loved him and I miss him, but I can't be his widow forever. That I have to figure out who I am now, and that might mean making choices he wouldn't have made, and she needs to accept that. Good. That's good. She cried. I made my dead husband's mother cry. Victoria pressed her hands to her face. What kind of person does that? The kind who's trying to survive. You set a boundary. That's not cruel. It felt cruel. Because you care about her. But caring about someone doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Victoria dropped her hands, looking at him with those red-rimmed eyes. Where do you get this stuff? Do you just have a database of therapy speak in your head? I had a lot of therapy after the divorce. Some of it stuck. She laughed. Actually laughed. Then the laugh turned into a sob, and suddenly she was crying. Not the silent tears from the early days, but full, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep. Adrian didn't think. He just moved, crossed the space between them, and pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, fists clutching his shirt, face pressed into his shoulder. He held her while she cried, one hand on her back, the other cradling her head, and he didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. Sometimes people just needed a break. When the sobs finally subsided, Victoria didn't pull away. She just stood there, breathing hard against his chest. I didn't come here this morning because I was afraid, she said, voice muffled. Afraid that if I kept showing up every day, I'd start needing this. Needing you. And I can't afford to need anyone right now. Why not? Because everyone I need leaves. My parents died when I was 25. Marcus just died. And if I let myself need you and then you decide this is too much, I don't think I'll survive it. Adrian pulled back just enough to look at her. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because I could have stopped opening the door 3 weeks ago. Could have told you this was getting too complicated or too involved or too much. But I didn't, because I don't want to. Victoria stared at him. Why? Why would you want this? I'm a mess. I show up at your door at random hours. I cry on your couch, I eat your ice cream and monopolize your time, and I can't even give you a good reason for any of it. You want a reason? Adrian kept his hands on her shoulders, steady. You make me feel like I matter, not as Emma's dad or as a freelance web designer or as someone's ex-husband, just as me. And I haven't felt that way in a really long time. Something shifted in her expression. Adrian, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know that you're not alone in this, whatever this is. She looked at him for a long moment, and Adrian could see her processing, weighing, deciding. Then she stepped back, putting distance between them. I should go. Okay. But I'll be here tomorrow, at 7. I'll be waiting. After she left, Adrian stood in his empty apartment and wondered what the hell he'd just admitted to. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, this had stopped being about helping a stranger, and he had no idea what it had become instead. The next morning, Victoria showed up at 7 a.m. with coffee for both of them and an apology. I shouldn't have dumped all of that on you last night, she said, handing him a cup. Yes, you should have. That's what this place is for. Still, it was a lot. Victoria, you cried on my shoulder for 30 minutes and told me you were afraid of needing me. In what world is that too much? She smiled, but it was tentative. In the world where I'm supposed to have my shit together. Nobody actually has their shit together. Some people are just better at pretending. They settled into their usual routine, Victoria on the couch, Adrian at the kitchen table with his laptop. But something had shifted between them. The air felt different, charged. Around 9 o'clock, Victoria spoke. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did your marriage end, really? You said you grew apart, but that feels like the sanitized version. Adrian closed his laptop. This wasn't a conversation he could have while pretending to work. We got married because it made sense. We'd been dating for 3 years. We were both 27. All our friends were getting engaged. It felt like the next logical step. But you loved her. I thought I did. Or maybe I loved the idea of her, of us. We looked good on paper, you know? Same education level, same career ambitions, same taste in restaurants. We fit. But fitting isn't the same as working, Victoria said. No, it's not. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. The first year was fine. Great, even. We were playing house, figuring out married life, still in the honeymoon phase. But then I started noticing these little cracks, like how she'd get annoyed when I wanted to stay in on weekends, or how she'd make decisions about our life without asking me, or how every conversation eventually circled back to her career. Did you talk to her about it? I tried. But every time I brought something up, she'd tell me I was being too sensitive, or that I needed to communicate better. And after a while, I started believing her. Thought maybe I was the problem. Victoria's expression darkened. That's gaslighting. Yeah, I know that now. Didn't know it then. He paused. When she got pregnant with Emma, I thought it would fix things. That having a kid would give us something to focus on together. And for a few months, it did. But then Emma was born, and reality hit, and all those cracks we'd been ignoring turned into canyons. What happened? She hated being a mom. Not Emma, she loved Emma, but she hated the actual work of parenting. The sleepless nights, the constant needs, the way everything revolved around this tiny person. And I think she resented me for being okay with it, for not minding that my life had completely changed. Adrian stood up, paced to the window. She went back to work when Emma was 3 months old, started taking business trips that lasted longer and longer. And when she was home, she was checked out. On her phone, in her office, anywhere but with us. By the time Emma turned 2, we were basically roommates who happened to have a kid together. When did you know it was over? Emma's 3rd birthday. We threw her a party, just family, a few of her friends from daycare. And I remember watching my wife stand in the corner of our living room on her phone while our daughter blew out her candles. And I thought, this is it. This is my life. And I hate it. The memory still stung, even 3 years later. Adrian turned back to face Victoria. I asked for a divorce 2 weeks later. She didn't even fight me on it, just said she'd been thinking the same thing. I'm sorry, Victoria said softly. Don't be. It was the right call. We're both better off now. She has her career, I have Emma, and we co-parent well enough that Emma doesn't feel caught in the middle. Do you still talk to her, your ex? Only about Emma. We're cordial, professional. But that's it. He sat back down in the armchair. Your turn. My turn? Yeah, I just gave you my entire marriage history. Fair's fair. Victoria pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Marcus and I worked. That's the thing that kills me. We actually worked. We wanted the same things. We communicated. We supported each other's goals. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Tell me about him. Not the CEO version, the real version. She was quiet for a long moment. He was brilliant. Not just smart, brilliant. Could see solutions to problems before most people even understood what the problem was. But he was also stubborn as hell. Once he made up his mind about something, good luck changing it. Sounds familiar? Adrian said, and Victoria threw a pillow at him. He was also terrible at remembering birthdays, like truly awful. Our first year married, he forgot our anniversary, just completely blanked on it. I was so mad. What did you do? Made him sleep on the couch for a week. Then he showed up with a weekend trip to Barcelona, and I forgave him. She smiled at the memory. He was like that. Would mess up, then find some grand gesture to fix it. Drove me crazy. Did you want kids? Adrian asked. You and Marcus? Victoria's smile faded. We talked about it. Put it off because the company needed us. Kept saying next year when things settled down. But things never settled down, and now it's too late. I'm sorry. Me too. She was quiet again, then said, Sometimes I wonder what he'd think of me now. If he'd be disappointed that I fell apart, that I can't just run the company and honor his legacy and move forward like nothing happened. I think he'd be proud of you for surviving, for asking for help, for showing up every day, even when it's hard. You didn't know him. No, but I know you. And anyone who loved you would want you to take care of yourself. Victoria looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're too good at this, at saying the right thing. I'm really not. I'm mostly just winging it. Well, you're winging it well. She checked her phone. I should get going. I have a meeting at 10. How's work been since you went back? Exhausting, but manageable. Roger from accounting is still being Roger, but I promoted Sarah Chen to VP of operations, and she's been running interference on the annoying stuff. Smart move. Victoria stood, gathering her things. But before she left, she turned back to him. Adrian, last night, when you said I make you feel like you matter? Yeah? You make me feel like I'm allowed to be broken, like I don't have to perform all the time, and I don't think you understand how rare that is. Then she was gone, leaving Adrian alone with the weight of her words and the growing realization that he was in way over his head. The weeks that followed fell into a new kind of rhythm. Victoria came most mornings before work, stayed for an hour or two, then left for the office. Some evenings she came back, exhausted and wrung out, and stayed for dinner. Emma started setting an extra place at the table without being asked. Victoria started keeping a change of clothes in Adrian's hall closet, just in case. It was domestic in a way that should have been terrifying, but somehow wasn't. One Saturday morning, week 5 since that first knock, Emma asked the question Adrian had been dreading. Dad, is Victoria your girlfriend? They were sitting at breakfast, just the two of them, while Victoria slept on the couch after showing up at 6 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept in days. Adrian nearly choked on his coffee. What? No, we're just friends. Grace's mom has a boyfriend. He comes over for dinner and sleeps on the couch sometimes. That's what Victoria does. It's different, Em. How? Adrian had no idea how to explain this to a 6-year-old when he couldn't even explain it to himself. Victoria is going through something hard. She needs a safe place to be. We're helping her. But you like her, right? Of course I like her. No, I mean you like her, the way you used to look at Mom in the old pictures. Jesus, when had his kid gotten so observant? It's complicated, he finally said. That's what adults say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. From the couch, Victoria's voice came, rough with sleep. She's not wrong. Adrian's head whipped around. Victoria was sitting up, hair a mess, still wearing yesterday's work clothes, looking at him with an expression that made his heart stop. How long have you been awake? He managed. Long enough. She stood up, stretched, winced. Emma, can I borrow your dad for a minute? Sure, I'll be in my room. Emma grabbed her cereal bowl and disappeared down the hall with the kind of obvious discretion only children possess. Victoria walked into the kitchen, poured herself coffee, and leaned against the counter. We should probably talk about this. About what Emma said? She's 6. She doesn't understand about the fact that she's right. Adrian froze. Victoria, I like you, she said simply. More than I should. More than makes sense. And I think you like me too, but you're too careful to say it because you think I'm still grieving and you don't want to take advantage. You are still grieving. Yes, I am. And I probably will be for a long time. But that doesn't mean I can't also feel other things, including this. She set down her coffee and crossed to where he stood. I'm not asking you to fix me or save me or whatever you think this is. I'm just saying that somewhere between crying on your couch and having ice cream with your daughter and learning what it feels like to be seen as a person instead of a CEO or a widow, I started falling for you. And I think you started falling for me too. Adrian's heart was racing. This is a terrible idea. Probably. The timing is all wrong. Definitely. You're vulnerable and I'm... Stop. Victoria put a hand on his chest. Stop coming up with reasons why this can't work and just tell me the truth. Do you have feelings for me or not? He looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who'd shown up broken at his door 5 weeks ago and slowly, painfully, started putting herself back together. The woman who made terrible jokes when she was nervous and cried during animated movies and helped Emma with her homework, even though she had no idea what she was doing. The woman who'd somehow become part of his life in a way he hadn't planned or expected or wanted, but now couldn't imagine losing. Yes, he said. Yes, I have feelings for you. Victoria smiled, and it was the first genuinely happy expression he'd seen on her face since the day they met. Okay, good. So what do we do about it? I have no idea. Me neither. She pulled her hand back, wrapped both arms around herself. I can't do a relationship right now. I'm barely holding myself together most days, but I also can't keep pretending this is just you helping me through a hard time. So what are you saying? I'm saying I don't know what this is, but I want to figure it out. If you're willing to be patient with me while I do. Adrian thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea, about how she was grieving and vulnerable and he'd built his whole life around staying safe and uninvolved, about how Emma was already attached and if this fell apart, everyone would get hurt. Then he thought about Victoria sitting on his couch at 7 a.m., finally able to breathe, about the way she laughed at Emma's terrible jokes, about how she'd looked at him last night and told him he made her feel allowed to be broken. Yeah, he said, I'm willing. The first thing that's changed was nothing at all. Victoria still showed up most mornings at 7, still curled up on the couch with her coffee, still stayed for dinner some evenings when work had beaten her down to nothing. But now there was this awareness hanging in the air between them, this unspoken acknowledgement that they'd crossed some invisible line, and neither of them knew exactly where it led. Adrian caught himself watching her more. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she always kicked off her heels the second she walked through the door, the small smile she got when Emma said something ridiculous. And sometimes he'd look up from his laptop to find her watching him back with an expression he couldn't quite read. 2 days after their conversation in the kitchen, Victoria stayed late. Emma had already gone to bed, and they were sitting in the living room, Victoria on the couch, Adrian in his usual chair, when she said, I told my therapist about you. Adrian looked up from his laptop. You're seeing a therapist? Started 2 weeks ago. Carol wouldn't stop pestering me about it, and I figured it was easier to just go than listen to her bring it up every conversation. She picked at a loose thread on the blanket. Anyway, I told her about coming here. About you. What did she say? That I'm using you as an emotional crutch, and I need to learn to process my grief independently. Victoria's voice was flat. That relying on someone I barely know is an avoidance tactic. Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. Do you think she's right? I think she's never lost anyone, so she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Victoria looked at him. I also think maybe she has a point about the relying part, not the avoidance part. There's a difference? Yeah. Avoidance is running away from the grief. What I'm doing here is, it's learning how to live with it. You don't make me forget Marcus. You just make it possible to exist in the same space as the grief without drowning in it. That sounds like something your therapist should appreciate. Victoria laughed, short and sharp. You'd think. But apparently healthy coping mechanisms look different when you're a billionaire widow. I'm supposed to be journaling and doing yoga and maybe taking a pottery class, not camping out at some guy's apartment every morning. Some guy, Adrian repeated. Wow. You know what I mean. Do I? He closed his laptop. Because it sounds like you're trying to diminish this. Make it smaller than it is. I'm not. Victoria stopped, jaw tight. I don't know how to do this, Adrian. I don't know how to grieve my husband and also have feelings for someone else at the same time. Those two things shouldn't be able to exist in the same person, but they do, and I don't know what to do with that. Who says they can't exist together? Everyone. Society. Common decency. That voice in my head that sounds like Carol telling me I'm disrespecting Marcus's memory. Adrian moved from the chair to the couch, sitting at the opposite end from her. Can I tell you what I think? Please? I think grief isn't linear. It's not this thing where you're sad for X amount of time, and then you're done and you get to move on. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes you're going to feel things that don't make sense together, and that's okay. Victoria pulled her knees to her chest. It doesn't feel okay. It feels like I'm betraying him. By what? By not being miserable every second of every day? By finding moments of happiness? By connecting with someone who makes you feel less alone? By wanting you. The words came out barely above a whisper. By lying in bed at night and thinking about what it would be like to kiss you instead of thinking about the fact that my husband is dead. The confession hung in the air between them. Adrian's heart was hammering so hard he was sure she could hear it. Victoria, I know. I know it's too soon and too complicated, and I'm probably just latching on to the first person who's shown me kindness. But I can't help it, and I hate that I can't help it. Adrian shifted closer, not touching her but near enough that she could feel his presence. What if it's not about it being too soon? What if it's just about it being real? She looked at him with those dark eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. How do I know the difference? I don't think you can, not yet. But that doesn't mean you have to figure it all out right now. What are you saying? I'm saying we don't have to put a label on this. We don't have to make any decisions. We can just be. Whatever that looks like. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I want to kiss you, right now. And I don't know if that's grief or loneliness or actual feelings, but I want to. But you're not going to. No. Because if I do, I need to be sure it's for the right reasons. And I'm not. Not yet. Adrian understood he did. But that didn't make it any easier to sit there, inches away from her, knowing they both wanted the same thing and couldn't have it. Okay, he said. Then we wait. You're really okay with that? Just waiting indefinitely while I figure out my mess? Yeah, I am. Why? Because you're worth waiting for. Victoria's breath caught. For a second, Adrian thought she might cry. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. They sat like that for almost an hour, not talking, just holding on. When she finally left that night, Adrian stood at the door and watched her walk down the hallway, and he knew with absolute certainty that he was in love with her, and it terrified him. The next morning, Victoria didn't show up, or the morning after that. By the third day, Adrian was starting to panic. He had no way to reach her, no way to know if she was okay or if she'd decided this was all too much and disappeared back into her billionaire life. Emma kept asking where Victoria was, and Adrian kept saying she was probably busy with work, but the lie felt hollow. On the fourth morning, he woke up at 6 and couldn't fall back asleep. He made coffee, opened his laptop, tried to focus on the website redesign he was supposed to deliver by Friday, but all he could think about was Victoria saying she wanted to kiss him and then vanishing. At 7:15, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry I didn't come by. Work has been insane. Can we talk? Tonight? Adrian stared at the message, relief flooding through him so intensely it was almost painful. He typed back, Yeah, of course. What time? 7:30? I'll be here. The day crawled by. He took Emma to school, came back, pretended to work, picked Emma up, made dinner. The whole time his mind was racing with possibilities. Maybe she'd decided this was too complicated. Maybe her therapist had convinced her to stop coming. Maybe she'd realized her feelings were just grief masquerading as something else. At 7:25, after Emma was in bed, there was a knock at the door. Adrian opened it to find Victoria standing there in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual work clothes. She looked tired but calmer than she had in days. Hi, she said. Hi, come in. She walked past him into the apartment, and Adrian noticed she was carrying a bottle of wine. I brought reinforcements. Figured we might need it. That good a conversation, huh? That necessary a conversation. She set the bottle on the counter. Do you have a corkscrew? Adrian found one, opened the wine, poured 2 glasses. They moved to the living room, Victoria on the couch, Adrian in the chair, the space between them feeling more significant than usual. I'm sorry I disappeared, Victoria said. That wasn't fair to you. What happened? Panic, fear, the sudden realization that I was falling for you and I had no idea what to do about it. She took a sip of wine. So I did what I always do when I'm overwhelmed. I threw myself into work, 14-hour days, back-to-back meetings, anything to avoid thinking about this. Did it work? No, it just made me miss being here more. She set down her glass. I talked to my therapist again. Had a very long, very uncomfortable session about grief and love and whether it's possible to feel both at the same time. And? And she said something that actually made sense. She said grief doesn't have to end for new feelings to begin, that humans are capable of holding multiple truths at once. I can miss Marcus and also care about you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. So what does that mean for us? It means I want to try, whatever this is. But I need you to understand something first. Victoria leaned forward, elbows on her knees. I'm not over Marcus. I don't know if I'll ever be fully over him. Some days are going to be harder than others. Sometimes I'm going to cry for no reason or pull away when things get too intense or freak out because I'm feeling happy, and that feels like betrayal. Okay. That's it? I just told you I'm an emotional disaster, and you're saying okay? What do you want me to say, that I'm only interested if you're completely healed and ready for a perfect relationship? Because that's not realistic, and we both know it. Victoria stared at him. Most people would run. I'm not most people. Adrian set down his wine and moved to sit next to her on the couch. Look, I'm not going to pretend this doesn't scare me. It does. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. That's either really romantic or really stupid. Maybe both. She laughed, and the sound was almost normal. So what now? Do we go on dates? Do we tell people? What does this look like? I have no idea. We're making this up as we go. I'm not good at making things up as I go. I'm a planner. I like spreadsheets and timelines and clearly defined outcomes. Yeah, well, relationships don't come with spreadsheets. They should. It would make everything so much easier. Victoria picked up her wine again, took a long drink. I'm going to be terrible at this, at being someone's whatever we are. I work too much. I'm emotionally unavailable half the time. I have a dead husband's mother who calls me twice a week to check in. I'm a mess. You know what I see when I look at you? Adrian said. Someone who's surviving something impossible. Someone who shows up every day, even when it's hard. Someone who eats ice cream with my daughter and helps her with her homework and makes terrible jokes when she's nervous. That's not a mess. That's just being human. Victoria's eyes were shining. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but it's not as complicated as you're making it either. She set down her wine and turned to face him fully. I want to try this. With you. I'm terrified and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to try. Then we'll try. Just like that? Just like that. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, and Adrian could see her working through something internal. Then she said, Can I kiss you? For real this time. His heart stopped. Are you sure? No, but I don't think I'll ever be completely sure about anything anymore, so maybe sure enough is good enough. Adrian reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his hand lingering against her cheek. Sure enough works for me. She leaned in slowly, giving him every chance to pull back. But he didn't. Their lips met, soft and tentative, and for a second the world narrowed down to just this: the warmth of her mouth, the smell of her perfume, the feeling of her hand coming up to rest against his chest. The kiss was brief, barely more than a moment, but when they pulled apart, everything felt different. Okay, Victoria breathed. Okay. You okay? I don't know. Ask me in 5 minutes when I stop shaking. Adrian took her hand, squeezed it. Take your time. They sat there in silence, not kissing again, but not letting go either. After a while, Victoria said, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Adrian's stomach dropped. What? The board wants me to do a press conference about coming back to work, about the company's direction moving forward, about how I'm honoring Marcus's legacy while leading Hale Industries into the future. Her voice was bitter. Basically, they want me to perform grief for the public so investors feel confident in my leadership. That's horrible. That's business. Image matters, especially when you're a 30-year-old widow running a billion-dollar tech company. They need to see that I'm stable, capable, not falling apart. When? Next week, Thursday. And you have to do this? If I want to keep my position as CEO, yes. The board's been nervous. About me. about whether I can handle this without Marcus. This press conference is me proving I can. Adrian squeezed her hand tighter. What do you need from me? I don't know. Maybe just be here after. Because I'm going to smile for the cameras and say all the right things about moving forward and honoring his memory, and then I'm going to need somewhere I can stop pretending. I'll be here. You always say that. Because I always mean it. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder, and they stayed like that until her wine was finished and the apartment had gone quiet around them. The week leading up to the press conference was brutal. Victoria came by most mornings, but she was distracted, anxious. She'd sit on the couch with her laptop, rehearsing answers to potential questions, running through talking points over and over until Adrian wanted to hide her computer. You're going to be fine, he told her on Wednesday morning, the day before the press conference. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. You've given presentations to rooms full of people who want to see you fail. This is just more of the same. This is different. This is personal. So make it personal. Tell the truth. That you miss Marcus. That you're learning how to lead without him. That the company matters to you and you're committed to its future. That's all they need to hear. Victoria looked up from her laptop. When did you get so good at this? At what? Knowing exactly what to say. It's annoying. Sorry for being supportive. She smiled despite herself. Don't apologize. It's actually kind of nice. Annoying, but nice. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Victoria stayed late again. They sat on the couch together, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. They'd kissed a few more times over the past week, soft, careful kisses that felt like questions neither of them knew how to answer yet. I'm scared, she admitted, about tomorrow. I know. What if I freeze up there? What if someone asks about Marcus and I just break? Then you break. And then you put yourself back together, same as you've been doing for the past 2 months. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy. It's just survivable. Adrian pressed a kiss to the top of her head. And you're one of the most capable people I've ever met. You'll survive this too. Victoria tilted her head up to look at him. What did I do to deserve you? Knocked on my door at 7 in the morning looking like death. Apparently that was enough. She laughed, then kissed him. This one lasted longer, deeper, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. I should go, Victoria said, but she didn't move. You should. I don't want to. Then stay. She looked at him, and Adrian could see her considering it. Then she shook her head. Not yet. When I stay over for the first time, I want it to be because we both want it, not because I'm scared about tomorrow. Fair enough. She left around 11, and Adrian lay awake in bed for hours, thinking about the press conference and what it would cost her to stand up there and perform strength she didn't feel. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. Adrian didn't watch it live. He was working, trying to meet a deadline he'd already pushed back twice. But at 2:15, his phone started buzzing with news alerts. He ignored them until Emma got home from school at 3:30. Dad, Victoria's on TV, Emma yelled from the living room. Adrian came out to find his daughter sitting on the floor in front of the TV, where a news channel was showing clips from the press conference. Victoria stood behind a podium bearing the Hale Industries logo, wearing a navy suit and the same carefully composed expression she'd worn to every morning meeting. Turn it up, Adrian said. A reporter was asking her about the merger with Davison Tech. Victoria's answer was smooth, confident, hitting all the right notes about innovation and growth and strategic partnerships. She looked like she'd been born to stand at that podium. Then another reporter asked, How has returning to work affected your grieving process? Victoria's expression didn't change, but Adrian saw her fingers tighten on the edge of the podium. Losing my husband was the hardest thing I've ever experienced, but Marcus built this company because he believed in its potential to change the world. The best way I can honor his memory is to continue that work. There have been concerns from some board members about your ability to lead during this difficult time. How do you respond to that? Adrian watched Victoria's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. I've been leading this company alongside my husband for 5 years. I know every division, every project, every person who makes Hale Industries what it is. My grief doesn't change my competence. It doesn't change my commitment. If anything, it's made me more determined to see his vision through. The reporter pressed, But surely there are days when it's difficult to focus. Of course there are. Victoria's voice sharpened. I'm human, but being human doesn't make me incapable. It makes me honest about the fact that leading a company while grieving is hard, but hard doesn't mean impossible. And I'm not interested in pretending otherwise for the sake of appearances. Adrian felt his chest tighten. She was done performing. He could see it in the set of her shoulders, the directness of her gaze. This was Victoria refusing to play the game anymore. The press conference wrapped up shortly after. Emma looked up at him. She looked sad. Yeah, kiddo, she did. Is she coming over later? I think so. At 6:47 p.m., the knock came. Adrian opened the door to find Victoria still in her navy suit, but the composed expression was gone. She looked wrung out, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. How bad was it? She asked. You were amazing. Liar. She walked past him into the apartment. I lost my temper. Told a reporter that being human doesn't make me incapable. The board is going to have my head. Good. They should hear it. Victoria turned to look at him. Adrian, I might have just tanked my career. Or you might have shown everyone that you're more than just a grieving widow. That you're a person with feelings who also happens to be brilliant at her job. That's not how corporate America works. Then maybe corporate America needs to catch up. She stared at him for a long moment, then crossed the room and kissed him. Hard, like she was trying to prove something to herself. When they broke apart, she said, I need you to know something. This, us, it's the only thing keeping me sane right now. The only thing that feels real. Victoria, I know it's not fair. I know I'm putting too much weight on something that's barely started. But I can't help it. When I'm here with you and Emma, I feel like a person instead of a performance. And I need that more than I need to be smart about this. Adrian took her face in his hands. Then stop trying to be smart about it. Just be here. With me. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm so scared of losing this too. You're not going to lose me. You can't promise that. No, I can't. But I can promise that I'm not going anywhere by choice. Whatever happens, we figure it out together. Victoria closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Together. Okay? They stood there in the middle of his living room, holding on to each other like it was the only thing keeping them both upright. And maybe it was. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed and they were sitting on the couch with the TV on mute, Victoria's phone rang. She looked at the screen and grimaced. Carol, she said. She probably saw the press conference. You don't have to answer. I do. If I don't, she'll just keep calling. Victoria answered the phone, putting it on speaker. Hi, Carol. Victoria. Marcus's mother's voice was tight. I saw your press conference. I figured you might. What were you thinking? Telling reporters you're not interested in keeping up appearances? You sounded defensive. Emotional. That's not what the board needs to see right now. Victoria's expression went cold. I sounded honest, Carol. Because I am. I'm tired of pretending I'm fine when I'm not. This isn't about you being fine. This is about protecting Marcus's legacy. About showing the world that Hale Industries is stable despite everything that's happened. I'm aware. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're falling apart. First you disappear for weeks, then you come back and immediately start making emotional decisions. I didn't disappear, I was grieving. And now? What's your excuse now? Victoria's jaw clenched. I don't need an excuse. I'm doing my job. I'm leading the company. I'm moving forward, exactly like you wanted me to. Not like this. Not by being human, Victoria's voice rose. By being a real person instead of some perfect grieving widow who never has a bad day. Sorry to disappoint you, Carol, but I can't do that anymore. I won't. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Carol said, voice icy, Marcus would be ashamed. Adrian watched Victoria's face crumble and then harden in the space of a heartbeat. Don't you dare, she said quietly. Don't you dare use him like that. I'm just saying what needs to be said. You're letting him down. No, Carol, I'm surviving. And if you can't see the difference, then maybe we need to take a break from these calls. Victoria, I have to go. Goodbye. She hung up before Carol could respond. For a moment, Victoria just sat there, staring at her phone. Then she threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a crack that made Adrian wince. "Shit," Victoria said. "Shit, shit, shit." "Hey." Adrian reached for her. "Come here." She turned to him, and the tears came, hard, angry tears that shook her whole body. Adrian pulled her into his arms and held on while she cried, one hand stroking her hair, the other pressed against her back. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I can't keep being what everyone needs me to be. I can't." "Then don't. It's not that simple." "Why not?" She pulled back, wiping at her eyes. "Because if I stop being the capable CEO and the devoted widow and the strong woman who's holding it all together, what am I?" "You're Victoria. That's enough." "It's not enough for the board, or Carol, or the reporters, or—" "It's enough for me," Adrian interrupted. "And for Emma. And most importantly, it should be enough for you." Victoria looked at him with red, swollen eyes. "How are you so sure about everything?" "I'm not. I'm just sure about you." She kissed him then, desperate and messy, and Adrian kissed her back, trying to pour everything he couldn't say into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria said, "Can I stay tonight? I don't want to go back to that empty house." Adrian's heart hammered. "Are you sure?" "No, but I don't care. I need to be here. With you." "Okay, yeah, of course." They didn't have sex. Victoria made that clear. She wasn't ready for that. Might not be ready for a long time. But she stayed, curled up next to Adrian in his bed, her head on his chest, his arms around her. And sometime around midnight, she finally fell asleep. Adrian lay awake, listening to her breathe, and wondered how the hell they were going to make this work. But for now, with her warm and real beside him, it didn't matter. They'd figure it out. They had to. Adrian woke up to find Victoria already gone. The space beside him in bed was cold, the pillow still dented from where her head had been. For a second, panic spiked through him. Had she left during the night? Changed her mind about all of this? Then he heard movement in the kitchen. He found her standing at the counter in one of his old t-shirts and her work pants from yesterday, making coffee. Her hair was a mess, makeup smudged under her eyes, and she looked more beautiful than she had any right to. "Morning," she said without turning around. "I hope you don't mind. I couldn't sleep anymore and I needed caffeine." "It's fine." Adrian leaned against the doorway, watching her. "You okay?" "Honestly, I don't know." She poured 2 mugs, handed him one. "I woke up at 5 and spent an hour lying there trying to figure out if last night was a mistake." Adrian's stomach dropped. And I still don't know. But I don't regret it." She took a sip of coffee, winced at the heat. "I should probably go home. Shower, change, try to look like someone who has their life together before I go into the office." "What time's your first meeting?" 9. "But I need to get there early, do damage control from yesterday's press conference." She set down her mug. "The board's not happy. I've got 3 voicemails from Roger and 1 from the CFO asking if we can touch base this morning. Let me guess. Roger wants to discuss your emotional stability." "Probably. Or he wants my job. Hard to say which." Victoria rubbed her eyes. "I need to go. Is it okay if I come back later? After work?" "You don't have to ask. You know that." She looked at him, and something in her expression softened. "I know, but I'm asking anyway." After she left, Adrian stood in his kitchen drinking coffee and trying to process the fact that Victoria Hale had spent the night in his bed. Nothing had happened. They'd just slept, her curled against him, his arms around her. But it felt monumental anyway, like they'd crossed some threshold they couldn't uncross. Emma emerged at 7:30, took one look at the extra coffee mug on the counter and said, "Victoria stayed over." It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Adrian admitted. "She had a bad night, needed somewhere to be." "Is she your girlfriend now?" "I don't know, Em. It's complicated." "You keep saying that." Emma grabbed the cereal box from the pantry. "But it doesn't seem that complicated. You like her. She likes you. That's how it works." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just don't listen." Adrian couldn't argue with that. The day passed in a blur of work calls and client emails. Around 2, his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Board meeting was a disaster. Roger's pushing for a vote of no confidence. I might be out as CEO by next week." Adrian stared at the message, his chest tightening. He typed back, "What do you need?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. I'll tell you later." She didn't come by that evening, or the next morning. By Saturday, Adrian was starting to worry again, but then she showed up at noon with takeout and an exhausted smile. "Sorry," she said, setting bags of Chinese food on his counter. "It's been a week. What happened with the board?" "Roger tried to get them to vote me out. Said I was too unstable, too emotional, not the right person to lead the company through this transition." Victoria started unpacking containers. "He almost had the votes." "Almost?" Sarah Chen shut him down, reminded everyone that I'd increased revenue by 40% in the last 2 years, and that the Davison merger was my deal, not Marcus's. Then she suggested that maybe the board should focus less on my emotional state and more on actual performance metrics. Adrian felt a rush of gratitude for this Sarah Chen he'd never met. "So you're still CEO?" "For now. They're putting me on a 90-day review. If the merger goes through and the numbers stay strong, I keep my position. If anything goes sideways, Roger gets what he wants. That's not fair. That's business." Victoria found plates in his cabinet, started dishing out food. "Marcus never had to prove himself like this. But I'm a 30-year-old woman who just lost her husband, so apparently I need to justify my existence every quarter. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm going to make that merger happen if it kills me. And then I'm going to watch Roger's face when the board has to admit they were wrong." Emma came running out of her room, drawn by the smell of food. "Victoria, you're here! Hey kiddo, brought your favorite, orange chicken." They ate lunch together at the small table, Emma chattering about her week while Victoria listened with genuine interest. Adrian watched them interact and felt something settle in his chest. This felt right. Messy and complicated and probably doomed to fail, but right. After Emma went back to her room, Victoria helped Adrian clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, and then she said, "I need to tell you something." Adrian's hand stilled in the soapy water. "Okay. I'm falling in love with you." The words came out rushed, like she needed to say them before she lost her nerve. "I know it's too soon, and I'm still grieving Marcus, and this is probably the worst timing in the history of terrible timing, but I am. And I needed you to know." Adrian turned to face her, dish towel in hand. "Victoria, you don't have to say it back. I'm not expecting that. I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't feeling it. And after this week, after almost losing my job and having the board question everything I've built, the one thing I was absolutely sure about was this: you. Can I say something now? Please." Adrian set down the towel and crossed to where she stood. "I've been in love with you since week 3. When you showed up with coffee and stayed for dinner and helped Emma with her homework even though you had no idea what you were doing. And it scared the hell out of me because you're right, the timing is terrible, but I don't care anymore." Victoria's eyes were shining. "You're in love with me." "Yeah, I am." She kissed him, and this time there was no hesitation, no careful testing of boundaries. Just the two of them, finally honest about what this was. When they broke apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" "I don't know. Figure it out as we go?" "I'm really bad at that." "I know, but you're learning." She laughed, the sound muffled against his shoulder. "This is insane. I'm a CEO dealing with a corporate coup, and I'm standing in your kitchen talking about feelings like a teenager. Welcome to being human." "I hate it." "No, you don't." "No," she admitted. "I don't." They spent the rest of the afternoon on the couch, Victoria's head in Adrian's lap while he worked on his laptop, and she read through merger documents on her phone. It was domestic and peaceful, and nothing like the high-stakes drama of her corporate life. Around 5, Victoria's phone rang. She looked at the screen and groaned. "It's Carol. 3rd time she's called this week." "You going to answer?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to just block her number and be done with it." But she's Marcus's mom, and despite everything, I can't just cut her out completely." Adrian ran his fingers through her hair. "Oh, so answer. But set boundaries. You're allowed to do that." Victoria sat up, took a breath, and answered the phone. "Hi, Carol." Adrian couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but he watched Victoria's expression shift from guarded to frustrated to something close to anger. "No," Victoria said firmly. "I'm not going to do that." A pause. Because Marcus is gone, Carol, and I can't keep making decisions based on what he might have wanted. I have to make decisions based on what's best for the company now. Another pause. Victoria's jaw tightened. That's not fair, and you know it. I loved him. I still love him. But loving him doesn't mean I have to live in his shadow for the rest of my life. Carol must have said something particularly cutting because Victoria's face went pale. You know what? I think we need to take a break from these calls. I can't keep defending my choices to you. It's exhausting, and it's not helping either of us. She listened for a moment, then said quietly, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I have to do what's right for me. Goodbye, Carol. She hung up and sat there, phone in her lap, staring at nothing. What did she say? Adrian asked gently. That I'm dishonoring Marcus's memory by changing the company direction, that I'm moving on too fast, her voice cracked, that I'm being selfish. You're not. Aren't I? I'm sitting here in another man's apartment, falling in love with someone who isn't my husband. Marcus has been dead for 3 months, and I'm already what? Already trying to survive? Already finding moments of happiness? That's not selfish, Victoria. That's human. It feels selfish. Adrian pulled her close. I know, but it's not. And somewhere, if Marcus loved you the way you say he did, he'd want you to be happy. Not miserable and alone, trying to preserve his legacy at the cost of your own life. Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, he would have liked you, I think. Marcus. He valued honesty, direct communication. You're like that. Yeah? Yeah, he probably would have thought you were too cautious, not ambitious enough. But he would have respected that you're a good dad, that you show up for the people you care about. It was the first time she'd talked about Marcus without it sounding like grief was eating her alive. Progress, Adrian thought. Small, but real. That night, Victoria stayed over again. This time, Emma knew. She said goodnight to both of them before bed, and if she thought it was weird that Victoria was sleeping in her dad's room, she didn't mention it. They lay in bed together, not sleeping, just existing in the quiet. I have to go to Marcus's grave tomorrow, Victoria said. It's his birthday. Adrian's hand stilled on her back. Do you want company? I don't know, maybe? Is that weird? Nothing about this situation is normal. Weird kind of comes with the territory. She turned to face him. I've never brought anyone there. It feels, I don't know, like I'd be introducing you to him. And that's bizarre on about 17 different levels. You don't have to decide now, but if you want me there, I'll be there. Victoria was quiet for a moment. What if I need you there, but I also hate that I need you there? Then we deal with both those things at the same time. You make everything sound so simple. It's not simple, but it's manageable. There's a difference. She kissed him, slow and soft, and Adrian felt the weight of what she was carrying. The grief that hadn't gone away, just made room. The fear that she was betraying Marcus by moving forward. The exhaustion from performing strength she didn't always feel. I love you, she whispered against his mouth. I need you to know that. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever I say or do or how I react, I love you. I love you too. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Adrian tried not to think about what tomorrow would bring. Sunday morning came with gray skies and the promise of rain. Victoria was up early, moving around the bedroom with careful quiet, trying not to wake him. Adrian opened his eyes to find her standing in front of his mirror, wearing black pants and a dark gray sweater, her hair pulled back. I'm coming with you, he said. She turned. Adrian, unless you really don't want me there, but if you're just trying to protect me from the awkwardness or whatever, don't. I can handle it. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. It's going to be hard for both of us. I know. You might see a side of me you haven't seen before. Okay. And Emma is going to her mom's this afternoon. Already arranged it. Victoria's expression crumpled slightly. You planned this? I figured you might need support, even if you didn't want to ask for it. She crossed to the bed, sat down on the edge. How are you this good at reading me? Practice. And paying attention. Adrian sat up, took her hand. We don't have to decide anything right now. Get ready. I'll make coffee, and then we'll figure out what you need. They drove to the cemetery in Victoria's car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Adrian made in a year. The whole way there, she was silent, hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, jaw set. The cemetery was enormous, sprawling across acres of carefully manicured grass and winding paths. Victoria navigated it like she'd done this 100 times, which she probably had. She parked near a section shaded by old oak trees and sat there for a moment, engine off, staring straight ahead. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "No, but I'm going anyway." They got out of the car. Victoria pulled a small bouquet of white roses from the back seat, simple, elegant, nothing like the elaborate flower arrangements that had covered Marcus's funeral. She led Adrian down a stone path to a plot marked by a black granite headstone. Marcus James Hale, beloved husband, visionary leader. 1984 to 2026, Victoria. Stood in front of the grave, flowers in hand, and said nothing. Adrian hung back, giving her space, watching her shoulders rise and fall with careful breaths. Finally, she knelt down and set the roses against the headstone. "Hi," she said softly. "Happy birthday." The intimacy of it hit Adrian hard. This wasn't the polished CEO or the grieving widow the world saw. This was just Victoria, talking to the person she'd lost. "I brought someone with me today," she continued. "His name is Adrian. You don't know him. I barely know him, honestly, but he's been helping me since you died, and I thought you should know about him." Adrian felt his throat tighten. "I know this is weird. I know if you were here you'd probably tell me I'm being ridiculous, that it's too soon, that I should focus on the company and not on some guy I met 3 months after you died." Her voice wavered. "But you're not here. And I don't know how to do this without you. The company, the board, Carol calling me every week, telling me I'm letting you down. I don't know how to be the person everyone needs me to be." She stopped, wiped at her eyes. "Adrian says I don't have to be, that I can just be me, and I want to believe him, but it feels like betraying you. Like if I stop trying to be the perfect grieving widow, I'm saying you didn't matter. But you did matter. You do matter. And I miss you so much it physically hurts sometimes." Adrian stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. "But I also love him," Victoria said, so quiet Adrian almost missed it. "And I don't know if that makes me a terrible person or just a person trying to survive. I don't know if you'd understand or if you'd hate me for it, but I needed to tell you, because hiding it feels worse than admitting it." She pressed her hand to the headstone. "I'm going to keep running the company. I'm going to make the merger happen. I'm going to prove to everyone that I can do this, but I'm also going to let myself be happy sometimes. And I hope that's okay with you. I hope wherever you are, you want that for me." Victoria stood up, brushed off her knees. She stood there for another minute, silent, and then she turned to Adrian. Her face was wet with tears, but her expression was calmer than he'd seen it in weeks. "Thank you," she said, "for coming." "Of course." She walked over to him, and he wrapped his arms around her. She didn't cry. She'd already done that. She just held on, breathing. After a few minutes, she pulled back. "Can we go? I can't be here anymore." "Yeah, let's go." They drove back in silence. Victoria pulled into a coffee shop parking lot halfway home and turned off the engine. "I need to say something," she said, "and I need you to just listen. Don't try to fix it or make it better. Just hear me." "Okay." She turned to face him. "I love you. And I loved Marcus. And those two things are going to exist in me at the same time for a long time, maybe forever. And some days I'm going to feel guilty about loving you. I'm going to pull away or freak out or say things I don't mean because the grief is going to hit me out of nowhere and I won't know how to handle it." "Okay. And you need to decide if you can live with that, because I can't promise you I'm going to wake up one day and be completely healed and ready for a normal relationship. This is always going to be complicated." Adrian reached over and took her hand. "You think I don't know that? You think I walked into this expecting easy? I think you deserve easy. You deserve someone who isn't carrying around a dead husband and a corporate crisis and a controlling mother-in-law." "Maybe, but that's not what I want." "What do you want?" "You. Exactly as you are. Grief and complications and all of it." Victoria stared at him. "Why?" "Because you're real. Because you don't pretend. Because loving you feels like the first honest thing I've done in years. He squeezed her hand. And yeah, it's going to be hard sometimes. But I'd rather do hard with you than easy with anyone else. She leaned across the console and kissed him, and it tasted like salt and coffee and promise. When they got back to his apartment, Emma was already at her mom's and the place was empty. Victoria collapsed on the couch, emotionally spent. Adrian made tea, the fancy kind she liked, and brought it to her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I just ran a marathon, but also like I can breathe a little easier." She took the mug. "Thank you for being there. It helped, even though it was the most awkward thing I've ever done." "Introducing your new boyfriend to your dead husband's grave. Yeah, that's pretty high on the awkward scale." "Boyfriend," Victoria repeated. "Is that what you are?" "I don't know. What do you want me to be?" She considered this. "I want you to be exactly what you are. Someone who shows up. Someone who doesn't run when things get hard. Someone who lets me be a mess without trying to fix me." "I can do that." "Then yeah, boyfriend works." They spent the rest of the day doing absolutely nothing. Watched bad TV, ordered pizza, existed in the quiet comfort of each other's presence. And when Victoria left that evening, she kissed him goodbye at the door and said, "I'll see you tomorrow, 7 a.m. I'll be here." But the next morning, the knock didn't come at 7, or 8, or 9. By 10, Adrian was genuinely worried. He'd texted her twice with no response. He tried calling, and it went straight to voicemail. At 10:47, his phone finally buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Emergency board meeting. Roger's making another play. I'll explain later." Adrian stared at the message, anxiety coiling in his gut. He wanted to text back to ask if she was okay, what was happening, if she needed anything, but he also knew she was in the middle of a corporate war and didn't need distractions. So he waited. Hours passed. Noon came and went. Then afternoon. By evening, Adrian was pacing his apartment, checking his phone every 5 minutes. At 8:33 p.m., the knock finally came. He opened the door to find Victoria standing there in her work clothes, makeup smudged, hair falling out of its ponytail. But she was smiling. "I won," she said. "What?" Roger tried to force a vote of no confidence, said the merger was moving too slowly, that I was distracted, that the company needed stronger leadership. She walked into the apartment, so I presented the final merger terms, walked them through every detail, every projection, every potential outcome. And then I told them they had a choice. Trust me to see this through or hand the company over to someone who's been angling for my job since day one. What did they say? They voted. 8-3 in my favor. Victoria's smile widened. Roger's officially out of the running, and the merger goes through next month. Adrian pulled her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Knowing you were here, that I had somewhere to come back to after everything, it made all the difference." They stood there in his doorway, holding each other, and Adrian thought about how far they'd come from that first desperate morning, how she'd been shattered then, barely holding on, and now she was standing here, victorious, still carrying her grief but no longer crushed by it. "Stay tonight," he said. "I was planning on it." And she did. The merger went through on a Wednesday in early December, 4 months after Marcus died, and 3 months after Victoria first knocked on Adrian's door. Adrian knew because Victoria texted him at 2:47 p.m. with a single word, "Done." He was in the middle of a client call when the message came through, and he had to mute himself to keep from reacting. When the call finally ended 20 minutes later, he immediately texted back. "How do you feel?" The response came almost instantly. "Like I just climbed Everest in heels. Can I come over?" "You don't have to ask." She arrived at 4:15, still in her work clothes, carrying a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than Adrian's monthly rent. Emma was at art class, so it was just the two of them when Victoria walked through the door and set the bottle on the counter with a decisive thunk. "We're celebrating," she announced. "Are we?" "We are. I just closed the biggest deal in Hale Industries history. I proved everyone wrong. I earned the right to drink expensive champagne in the middle of the afternoon." Adrian found 2 mugs. He didn't own champagne glasses. "Mugs, okay." "Mugs are perfect." She popped the cork, poured for both of them. "To surviving impossible things." They clinked mugs and drank, and Adrian watched her face as the reality of what she'd accomplished sank in. The tension in her shoulders started to ease. The tight set of her jaw relaxed. For the first time in months, she looked like someone who wasn't carrying the weight of the world. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Thanks." She took another sip. "I'm proud of me too. Is that allowed, to be proud of yourself?" "Absolutely." "Good. Because I worked my ass off for this. And I did it without compromising what Marcus built. I honored his vision while making it my own. And that feels—" She stopped, searching for the word. "It feels like closure. Almost." "Almost?" Victoria set down her mug. "There's still stuff I need to deal with. Carol, mainly. We haven't spoken since I told her we needed a break. And I know I can't avoid her forever, but I have no idea how to fix that relationship." "Do you want to fix it?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should. She's my dead husband's mother. But another part of me is so tired of defending my choices to her, of feeling guilty for living my life." Adrian moved closer, wrapped his arms around her. "You don't have to decide today. Today, you get to just be happy about the merger." She leaned into him. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Showed up at my door looking like you needed help. Turns out that was enough." They spent the rest of the afternoon on the couch, Victoria curled against him, both of them half watching a documentary neither cared about. It was peaceful in a way Adrian had learned to cherish. These quiet moments where nothing dramatic was happening, where they could just exist together. Around 6, Emma came home from art class, took one look at the champagne bottle on the counter, and said, "Did something good happen?" "Victoria closed a big deal at work," Adrian explained. Emma walked over to the couch. "Congratulations, Victoria." "Thanks, kiddo." "Does this mean you're less stressed now?" Victoria laughed, hopefully. "Why?" "Because when you're stressed, you get this line right here." Emma pointed to the space between Victoria's eyebrows. "And it makes you look grumpy even when you're not actually grumpy." "Emma," Adrian warned, but Victoria was already laughing harder. "She's not wrong. I do get that line." Victoria pulled Emma into a hug. "But yeah, hopefully I'll be less stressed now." They ordered Thai food for dinner, and Emma dominated the conversation with a detailed explanation of the painting she'd made in class. Something involving a dragon and a castle and a lot of purple because purple is the best color, obviously. Victoria listened with the same focused attention she probably gave board presentations, asking questions and nodding seriously at Emma's explanations. After Emma went to bed, Victoria helped Adrian clean up the kitchen. They moved around each other with the easy familiarity of people who'd done this 100 times, and Adrian found himself thinking about how natural this had become. How she fit into his life like she'd always been there. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said as she dried the last plate. Adrian's hand stilled in the soapy water. Those words never led anywhere good. "What is it?" She set down the plate, turned to face him. "The board wants me to do a press tour. Interviews, profiles, the whole thing. Show the world that Hale Industries is thriving under new leadership." That sounds good, right? It would be, except they also want me to talk about Marcus, about losing him and how I've moved forward. They want to sell this narrative of the grieving widow who channeled her pain into business success. Adrian could see where this was going. "And you don't want to do that." "I don't know what I want. Part of me thinks I owe it to Marcus to keep his story alive, to talk about what he built and what he meant to me. But another part is so sick of performing grief for public consumption, of having my personal tragedy turned into a branding opportunity." "What do you want to do?" "I want to tell them to go to hell. I want to say I'll do the interviews, but I'm not making Marcus's death into content. That I'll talk about the merger and the company's future and my vision for where we're going, but my personal life is off limits." "So do that." Victoria shook her head. "It's not that simple. The board thinks the personal angle is what makes me relatable, that people want to see the human side of the CEO, and they're probably right. You can be human without exploiting your grief. Can I? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like my grief is the only thing that makes me interesting to people. Without it, I'm just another tech executive." Adrian dried his hands and moved to stand in front of her. "You're brilliant. You're innovative. You just closed a merger that everyone said was impossible. That's interesting. Your grief doesn't make you special. Your competence does. The media doesn't care about competence. They care about tragedy and redemption arcs. Then don't give them what they want. Give them what you want. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. What if what I want doesn't make good business sense? Then you make it make sense. You're the CEO. You have the power here. She kissed him, sudden and fierce. When she pulled back, she said, I'm going to do the interviews, but on my terms. Talk about the merger, the company direction, my leadership style. And if they ask about Marcus, I'll give them one answer, that I loved him, that losing him was devastating, and that I'm learning to move forward. That's it. No exploitation. No sob story. That sounds perfect. The board's going to hate it. The board can deal with it. You just made them millions. They owe you this. Victoria smiled. When did you get so good at giving pep talks? Practice. You're not the first person I've had to convince they're worth more than their worst day. Who else? Myself. About 3 years ago. She kissed him again, softer this time. We're a mess, aren't we? Both of us just trying to figure out how to be people. Yeah, but we're figuring it out together. That counts for something. That night, after Victoria left, Adrian lay in bed thinking about the future, about what it would look like if this thing between them actually worked. He'd been so focused on the day-to-day, on helping her survive, on making space for her grief, on not pushing for more than she could give, that he hadn't let himself think beyond it. But now, with the merger done and Victoria starting to find her footing again, he couldn't help but wonder, what did she want from this? From him? And was he ready for whatever that answer might be? The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Victoria spent her days working with a media consultant, rehearsing answers to potential questions, perfecting her talking points. She'd come over most evenings, exhausted but determined, and run through her responses with Adrian. Too corporate? She'd ask after explaining her vision for sustainable manufacturing. A little. Try leading with why it matters to you personally. How's this? I grew up in a town where the main factory closed and half the community lost their jobs. I've seen firsthand what happens when companies prioritize profit over people. That's not the legacy I want Hale Industries to have. Perfect. That's real. The interviews started the first week of December. Adrian watched the first one from his living room while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. Victoria looked polished and professional, her answers sharp without being defensive. And when the interviewer inevitably asked about Marcus, she gave the response she'd prepared. Losing Marcus was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. But I learned that grief doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of something new. And for me, that something new is leading this company into a future that honors what he built while embracing what we can become. Short, honest, not exploitative. The interviewer tried to push for more, asked about her healing process, whether she'd found support, if she had any regrets. Victoria deflected each question gracefully, steering the conversation back to the company. Adrian was so proud of her he could barely stand it. After the interview aired, Victoria came over looking relieved. How'd I do? You were perfect. Didn't give them an inch. The board's already emailing me. They think I should have been more vulnerable, more open about the journey. Of course they do, but you stuck to your boundaries. That takes guts. Emma looked up from her homework. I watched some of your interview at Grace's house. Her mom had it on. Victoria's eyebrows shot up. Yeah? What did you think? I think you looked sad when you talked about Marcus, but also strong. Like you miss him, but you're okay. Victoria's expression went soft. That's exactly what I was going for, kiddo. Grace's mom said you're really pretty and also really smart, and that's not fair because most people only get to be one. Adrian choked on his coffee. Victoria laughed so hard she had to sit down. Tell Grace's mom thank you, Victoria managed. I think. That weekend, Victoria surprised Adrian by asking if Emma could come stay at her house. My house? She clarified when Adrian looked confused. I know it's big and probably intimidating, but I have a pool and a screening room, and Emma mentioned wanting to watch that new animated movie. I thought maybe we could make a day of it. You want Emma to come to your house. Is that weird? It feels weird. Tell me if it's weird. It's not weird. I think Emma would love it. But are you sure? You've kept that space pretty separate from all of this. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I know. And I did that because I needed it to still be Marcus's house, our house, a place I could go and still feel connected to him. But lately it's just felt empty. And I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe it's time to let other people in. That's a big step. I know, but I'm ready, I think. So on Saturday morning, Adrian and Emma drove to Victoria's house, a sprawling modern estate in the hills with floor-to-ceiling windows and an infinity pool that overlooked the city. Emma's eyes went wide when they pulled up to the gate. "Victoria lives here?" she whispered. "Yeah. Pretty cool, right?" "Right." Victoria was waiting at the front door wearing jeans and a t-shirt Adrian had never seen her in. She looked younger, less CEO, more just Victoria. "Welcome," she said, gesturing them inside. "Sorry about the size, it's excessive. Marcus liked making statements." The interior was stunning, all clean lines and expensive furniture and art Adrian didn't understand, but assumed was worth more than his car. But it also felt cold, like a museum instead of a home. "This is amazing," Emma breathed, spinning in a slow circle. "Want to see the pool?" Victoria asked. They spent the afternoon swimming and watching movies in a screening room that had actual theater seats. Victoria ordered pizza, and they ate it on the back patio while Emma asked a million questions about the house and the pool and whether Victoria had any pets. "No pets," Victoria said. "Marcus was allergic to everything with fur, but I've been thinking about getting a dog. Maybe. You should get a golden retriever. They're the best. I'll keep that in mind." After the movie, Emma started yawning, and Adrian realized it was almost 8. "We should probably head out. It's getting late." "Or," Victoria said carefully, "you could stay. Both of you. I have about 6 guest rooms, and it feels silly to make you drive all the way back across town." Adrian looked at her. This was more than just offering a place to sleep. This was Victoria inviting them into the space she'd shared with Marcus, letting them be part of this life she'd kept so carefully separate. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm sure." Emma was thrilled at the idea of a sleepover in a mansion. Victoria showed them to a guest room that was bigger than Adrian's entire apartment, with an ensuite bathroom and a balcony overlooking the pool. After Emma was settled, Adrian found Victoria in the kitchen, staring at a photo on the counter. It was from her wedding, her and Marcus, both laughing at something off camera. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "Yeah, this is the first time I've had people stay here since he died, and it feels different than I expected." "Different how?" "Less painful. Like maybe the house can be more than just a shrine to what I lost." She set down the photo. "Does that make sense?" "Yeah, it does." Victoria turned to face him. "I want you to know something. This doesn't erase Marcus. Having you here, letting Emma run around the pool he designed, sleeping in the house we built together, it doesn't mean I've forgotten him or moved on completely." "I know. But it also doesn't mean I'm stuck in the past. I can honor what we had while building something new. Those things can coexist." Adrian pulled her close. "You're figuring it out, one day at a time." "We're figuring it out," she corrected. "I couldn't do this without you." That night, Adrian lay in a guest bed in Victoria's mansion and thought about how far they'd come. About the woman who'd shown up at his door 4 months ago, barely holding on. And the woman she was becoming, someone who could carry her grief while still choosing to live. The next morning, they had breakfast on the patio. Emma was in heaven, eating pancakes by the pool and asking if they could come back next weekend. Victoria caught Adrian's eye across the table and smiled, and he knew they were thinking the same thing. This was starting to feel like something real, something that might actually last. The weeks leading up to Christmas were chaotic. Victoria's press tour continued, and she was traveling more for work. But she still made time for morning coffee at Adrian's apartment, still showed up for dinner when she could, still texted him random thoughts throughout the day. One evening in mid-December, she arrived looking troubled. "Carol called," she said without preamble. "She wants to have lunch. Talk about the holidays and where we go from here. Are you going to meet her?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should, that enough time has passed and we need to figure out how to coexist. But another part is still so angry at her for making me feel guilty about moving forward." "What does your therapist say?" "That I should set clear boundaries before agreeing to meet. That I need to be ready to walk away if she starts the same patterns." Victoria sank onto the couch. "I'm tired of boundaries. I'm tired of having to defend every choice I make." "Then don't meet her. Not yet." "But what if I'm just avoiding something hard? What if I'm letting my anger make decisions instead of being mature about this?" Adrian sat next to her. "What do you want? Not what you should want. Not what's mature or right or whatever. What do you actually want? Victoria was quiet for a long time. I want her to accept that I'm allowed to live my life, that loving Marcus doesn't mean I have to spend the rest of my life proving it to her. And until she can do that, I don't want to have lunch and pretend everything's fine. Then tell her that. Just like that? Just like that. So Victoria called Carol, put her on speaker, and said, calmly but firmly, that she needed more time before they could have a productive conversation. That she loved Marcus and always would, but that her grief didn't belong to anyone but herself. That when Carol was ready to respect that, they could try again. Carol didn't take it well. There were accusations of selfishness, of dishonoring memory, of choosing a new man over family. Victoria listened to all of it and then said, I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is what I need right now. Goodbye, Carol. She hung up and sat there, staring at her phone. How do you feel? Adrian asked. Like I just set fire to a bridge I might need later. She looked at him. But also lighter. Is that terrible? No, that's healthy. Emma emerged from her room, took one look at Victoria's face, and climbed onto the couch next to her. Did something bad happen? I had a hard conversation with someone, but it's okay. I'm okay. Emma leaned against her. My teacher says hard conversations are important because they let people know what you need. Victoria looked down at the 6-year-old pressed against her side. Your teacher is very smart. I know. She has a PhD. After Emma went to bed, Victoria stayed. She and Adrian talked about the holidays, about what they wanted this year to look like. Victoria admitted she'd been dreading Christmas. The first one without Marcus, the empty traditions, the pressure to appear festive. What if we made new traditions, Adrian suggested. Just the three of us, nothing fancy, just stuff that feels right. Like what? I don't know. Emma and I usually get a real tree and make decorations. We bake cookies that turn out terrible, but we eat them anyway. We watch cheesy movies and drink hot chocolate with too many marshmallows. Victoria smiled. That sounds nice. Really nice. You could join us, if you want. I want. So that's what they did. The weekend before Christmas, Victoria came over with bags of baking supplies and an enthusiasm that surprised Adrian. They made cookies, chocolate chip and sugar, and something Emma insisted on calling rainbow surprise that involved way too much food coloring. Half of them burned and the other half were undercooked. But they tasted fine, and Emma declared it the best baking day ever. They decorated the tree together, Emma directing where every ornament should go while Victoria and Adrian followed orders. And when they were done and the lights were plugged in and the whole apartment glowed warm and festive, Victoria stood there looking at it with something like wonder. I haven't had a real tree in years, she said. Marcus thought they were messy, preferred the perfect artificial ones. And what do you think? Adrian asked. I think real is better, even if it's messier. On Christmas Eve, Emma was with her mom, so Adrian invited Victoria to come over anyway. They sat on the couch with the tree lights on and the TV off, just existing in the quiet. I got you something, Victoria said, pulling a small wrapped box from her bag. Victoria, you didn't have to. I know. But I wanted to. She handed it to him. It's not much. Just something I thought you'd like. Adrian unwrapped it to find a leather-bound journal, expensive and beautifully made. On the first page, Victoria had written, "For all the things worth remembering." I know you're not really a journal person, she said, but I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe you'd want to write down some of this, what we've been through, what we're building. Adrian felt his throat tighten. This is perfect. Thank you. I have something for you too, he said, reaching for the gift he'd hidden behind the couch. Victoria unwrapped it to find a framed photo, one Adrian had taken a few weeks ago without her noticing. She was sitting on his couch with Emma, both of them laughing at something on Emma's tablet. The joy on Victoria's face was unguarded and real. I thought you might want a reminder, Adrian said, of what happiness looks like now. Not what it used to be, just what it is. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I love it. I love you. I love you too. They kissed under the glow of the Christmas tree, and it felt like a promise, like they were choosing this, choosing each other, despite the grief and the complications and the impossibility of it all. The new year came with surprising calm. Victoria's press tour wrapped up successfully. The merger numbers exceeded projections. The board stopped questioning her leadership. And slowly, week by week, Victoria started to settle into this new version of her life. She still had hard days, days when grief hit her out of nowhere and she needed to cancel plans and just be alone. Days when she woke up reaching for Marcus and had to remember all over again that he was gone. But those days got farther apart. And when they came, she let herself feel them without guilt. In February, 6 months after Marcus died and 5 months after that first knock, Victoria showed up at Adrian's door on a Saturday morning with a proposal. "Move in with me," she said. Adrian blinked. "What?" "Move in. You and Emma. Into the house. It's too big for just me, and it feels ridiculous to keep it empty when you're living in this tiny apartment and paying rent you could be saving." "Victoria, I know it's fast. I know this is probably insane, but I've been thinking about it for weeks, and I can't come up with a good reason why we shouldn't. Can you?" Adrian could think of about 17 reasons. The speed of it, the complications it would create, what it would mean for Emma if things didn't work out. But looking at Victoria standing in his doorway, nervous but hopeful, he realized none of those reasons felt as important as the one reason to say yes. He loved her, and he wanted to build a life with her. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Yeah, let's do it." Victoria's face broke into the brightest smile he'd ever seen. "Really?" "Really. But we need to talk to Emma first. Make sure she's comfortable with it." "Of course. Absolutely. When?" "How about now? She's in her room." They sat Emma down and explained the idea. Adrian watched his daughter's face carefully, trying to gauge her reaction. "So we'd live in Victoria's big house?" Emma asked. "With the pool?" "Yes," Victoria said. "And you'd have your own room. A big one. You could decorate it however you want. And we'd all live there together? Like a family?" The word hung in the air. Adrian hadn't thought about it in those terms, but Emma was right. That's what this would be. A family. "Yeah," he said. "Like a family." Emma looked between them. "Would Victoria be like my stepmom?" Victoria froze. Adrian could see the panic in her eyes. This was a question neither of them had prepared for. Victoria stopped. Tried again. "That's up to you, kiddo. I would never try to replace your mom. But if you wanted me to be someone important in your life, someone you could count on, I'd like that very much." Emma considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." 10 minutes later, Emma came back. "I decided. I want to move into the big house. And Victoria can be my bonus parent. Grace has one of those, and she says it's cool because she gets extra birthday presents." Adrian laughed. Victoria looked like she might cry. "Bonus parent," Victoria repeated. "I like that." They moved in over spring break. It took 3 trips to transport all of Adrian's and Emma's belongings, and even then, their stuff barely made a dent in the enormous house. Victoria helped Emma set up her new room, which was easily 3 times the size of her old one. They painted one wall purple, Emma's choice, and filled it with her drawings and crafts. The first night in the house, after Emma was asleep, Adrian and Victoria stood in the master bedroom, the room Victoria had shared with Marcus, and faced the question neither of them had addressed. "I can't sleep here," Victoria said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. Is that okay?" "Of course it's okay. We'll use one of the guest rooms. There's one at the other end of the hall. It has good light. We could make it ours." "Ours," Adrian repeated. "I like the sound of that." They made the guest room theirs, moved Adrian's few pieces of furniture in, added some of Victoria's things, created a space that belonged to both of them. And when they lay in bed that first night, Victoria said, "This feels right, scary, but right." "Yeah, it does." "I never thought I'd be here. 6 months ago, I was barely surviving, and now I'm—" "Happy?" Adrian suggested. "Getting there? Not all the way, but getting there." She turned to face him. "Thank you for opening your door that morning, for not turning me away. Thank you for knocking." They fell asleep in their new room, in their new life, and Adrian thought about how sometimes the most unexpected things turn out to be exactly what you needed. The months that followed weren't perfect. There were adjustments, learning to share space, figuring out routines, navigating the reality of living together. There were arguments about small things like whose turn it was to do dishes, and big things like how to handle Emma's bedtime on school nights. There were also moments of unexpected joy. Saturday mornings in the pool with Emma, dinner parties where Victoria cooked elaborate meals and Adrian provided moral support, quiet evenings on the couch after Emma went to bed, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. In June, almost a year after Marcus died, Victoria went back to his grave. This time, Adrian and Emma came with her. Emma brought flowers she'd picked from Victoria's garden, bright yellow daisies that looked nothing like funeral flowers. Victoria knelt in front of the headstone and said, "Hi, it's been a while." She told him about the company, about the merger's success, about the new projects they were developing. She told him about Adrian and Emma, about the life she was building, about how she was learning to be happy again. "I still miss you," she said. "I always will. But I'm okay now, and I think you'd be glad about that." Emma stepped forward and set her flowers on the grave. "Hi, Marcus, I'm Emma. Victoria lives with me and my dad now, and she's really nice. I hope you're okay wherever you are." Adrian watched Victoria's face as Emma spoke, saw the tears and the smile happening at the same time. This was what healing looked like. Not forgetting, not moving on completely, just learning to carry it all, the grief and the love and the new beginnings together. On their way back to the car, Victoria took Adrian's hand. "I'm ready," she said. "Ready for what?" "To close Marcus's office. At the house. It's been sitting there like a museum for a year, and I think it's time to let it be something else." "What do you want to turn it into?" "I was thinking a library. Somewhere Emma can do homework. Somewhere we can all use. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay." So they transformed the office. Kept some of Marcus's things, his favorite books, a few photos, the awards he'd won. But they also added new shelves, comfortable chairs, a desk for Emma. Made it a space that honored what was while making room for what is. The night they finished, Victoria stood in the doorway looking at the new library and said, "I think he'd approve of all of this." Yeah, Marcus wanted me to be happy. He would have hated seeing me stuck in grief. And I think he'd like you. Like the person you are with Emma, the life we're building." Adrian wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I hope so. I know so." In August, on what would have been Marcus's 43rd birthday, Victoria didn't go to the cemetery. Instead, she donated money to a scholarship fund in his name and spent the day at the beach with Adrian and Emma. They built sandcastles and ate ice cream and watched the sunset, and Victoria laughed more than she'd cried. That night, lying in bed, she said, "I'm happy. Actually happy. Not just okay or surviving or getting through it. Happy." "Good. You deserve that." "So do you." She propped herself up on one elbow. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "I want to marry you. Not now. I'm not ready for that yet, and I don't know when I will be. But someday, when enough time has passed and it feels right. I want you to know that's where this is heading, for me." Adrian's heart stopped. "Victoria, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that this isn't temporary for me, that I'm all in." "I'm all in too," Adrian said. "And whenever you're ready, whenever it feels right, my answer will be yes." She kissed him, and it tasted like promise and possibility and the future they were building together. 2 years later, on a quiet Saturday morning in October, Victoria and Adrian got married in their backyard. It was small, just Emma and a handful of close friends, and Sarah Chen, who'd become one of Victoria's closest confidants. No press, no spectacle. Just two people who'd found each other at the worst possible time and decided to make it work anyway. Emma was the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. She took her job very seriously, scattering petals with careful precision while the small group of guests smiled. When it was time for vows, Victoria spoke first. "3 years ago, I knocked on a stranger's door because I couldn't breathe, and you let me in. You gave me space to fall apart and put myself back together. You loved me when I was broken, and when I was healing, and when I was finally whole again. You taught me that grief and joy can coexist. That moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. That sometimes the most unexpected love is the truest kind." Adrian's turn. "You showed up at my door and changed everything. You made me believe in taking risks again, in opening up, in building something real instead of just something safe." You made our small world bigger and better, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life figuring out this adventure with you." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that Victoria had chosen because Marcus had given her platinum, and she wanted this to be different. Not better or worse. Just different, just theirs. When the officiant pronounced them married, Emma cheered so loud that everyone laughed. And when Adrian kissed his wife for the first time, he thought about that morning 3 years ago when he'd opened his door to a devastated stranger. He'd had no idea then what would come of it, no idea that grief could lead to love, that broken people could build something whole together, that the worst knock on your door could turn into the best thing that ever happened to you. That night, after the small reception and after Emma had gone to bed, Adrian and Victoria stood on their back patio looking at the lights strung through the trees. "Happy?" he asked. "So happy," Victoria said, "and so grateful for you, for Emma, for this life we built. Even though it started in the worst possible way, especially because it started that way, because it means we know how to survive the hard stuff. We've already been through the worst and come out the other side." Adrian pulled her close. "Here's to surviving and to thriving." "To both," Victoria agreed. They stood there in the quiet of their backyard, in the home they'd made together, and Adrian thought about how sometimes love doesn't announce itself with fireworks and grand gestures. Sometimes it comes as a desperate knock at 7 in the morning. Sometimes it grows in the space between grief and healing. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and nothing like what you planned. And sometimes that's exactly what makes it real. Victoria had knocked on his door looking for somewhere to breathe. And together, they'd built a place where they both could. Not despite the grief and the complications and the impossible timing, but because of it. Because they'd chosen each other anyway. Because love doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It shows up when you need it most and asks if you're brave enough to let it in. And they had been. They were. They would be.